Everyone was excited about the big movie premiere. It was the night Dune. Part 2 was finally being shown to the world. The red carpet was full of flashing lights and loud cheers from fans. Reporters stood ready with microphones. Everyone was looking forward to seeing Zendaya and Timothée Chalamet walk in together. Zendaya showed up first. She stepped out of her car wearing a beautiful silver dress that sparkled under the lights. People gasped and clapped as she smiled and waved. Photographers called her name, and she posed for pictures with confidence. She looked calm, cool, and happy to be there. A few minutes later, Timothée arrived. He wore a sleek black suit with shiny boots and a touch of his usual fun style. He gave a quick wave, flashed a smile, and joined Zendaya for pictures. The two of them had become fan favorites, not just for their acting but also for their real-life friendship. They laughed, whispered to each other, and looked completely at ease. After photos, the two stars walked into the theater with the rest of the cast. Inside, the energy was just as strong. Movie fans, celebrities, and press filled the seats, all eager to see the film before anyone else. Zendaya and Timothée sat next to each other in the front row. They whispered and laughed quietly as the lights dimmed and the screen lit up. The movie played, and the audience was locked in. Some scenes got loud cheers, others were quiet and emotional. Timothée leaned over during one scene and said something to Zendaya. She smiled and nodded. People sitting near them could tell they were having fun watching themselves on the big screen. As the movie ended, the crowd stood and clapped. The cast was called up for a short question and answer session. Everyone was smiling. Zendaya took the mic first, thanking the fans and saying how proud she was of the movie. The audience cheered again. Then it was Timothée's turn. He made a few jokes and told a story about filming in the desert. People laughed, and Zendaya smiled as she listened. Everything seemed fine, until one small moment that would change the mood completely. Timothée made a joke about their on-screen chemistry. He used one word that didn't sound right. It wasn't harsh, but it felt off. It made Zendaya's smile drop just a little. She didn't say anything, but her face told a different story. That was when things started to shift. After the awkward moment during the Q&A, Zendaya stayed quiet for a while. She didn't make a scene or show her discomfort right away. Timothée continued to talk, smiling as he answered questions from the audience. But Zendaya's expression had changed. She no longer looked as happy as before. She glanced at him a couple of times, but there was a slight distance in her gaze. As the event went on, people began to notice that something was different. Zendaya didn't seem as engaged as she had been earlier. She wasn't laughing at Timothée's jokes like she usually did. Instead, she kept her answers short, offering polite smiles, but not much more. The energy that had been buzzing just moments before started to fade. When it was time for the press conference to end, the cast stood up to leave the stage. Timothée gave Zendaya a friendly nudge, but she didn't respond with the usual warmth. She simply nodded and gathered her things. The moment was subtle, but to those watching closely, it was clear something had shifted. Backstage, there was a brief moment of silence between the two of them. They didn't speak much. Timothée was still trying to figure out if he had said something wrong, but Zendaya didn't seem eager to discuss it. She just quietly walked towards the exit, heading backstage with her head held high, but her pace a little faster than usual. As she passed by some crew members, one of them asked if she was okay. Zendaya simply replied, "I'll be fine." Her voice didn't sound angry, but there was a tone of disappointment, something that told everyone she wasn't feeling great about how things had gone. Timothée, on the other hand, was left standing with a puzzled look on his face. He had no idea what had just happened. He thought he was being funny, but now he wasn't so sure. He tried to make sense of it, but figured it was best to give her space. He didn't chase after her or try to explain. He knew she'd want time to process. The rest of the evening passed in a blur for Zendaya. She avoided most of the after-party crowd, staying in the quieter areas of the venue. Timothée, however, mingled with the other stars, though his usual charm was noticeably toned down. He was still thinking about Zendaya, hoping everything was okay between them. At some point, Zendaya left the event early. She told a few close friends she needed some time alone to reflect. It wasn't an angry departure, but it was clear the night had been affected by the small but significant moment on stage. Back in their hotel rooms later that night, Zendaya and Timothée were both quiet. Neither of them said much, but both were thinking about what had happened. It wasn't a big fight. It wasn't even a major disagreement, but it was a moment of tension neither of them expected. The next morning, Timothée decided he needed to make things right. The morning after the premiere, Timothée woke up with a heavy feeling. He couldn't stop thinking about the way Zendaya had walked out of the event. It wasn't like her to leave early, and it wasn't like her to seem so distant. He had to fix things, but he didn't know how to start. He grabbed his phone and sent a text to Zendaya. It was simple. "Hey, can we talk? I didn't mean to upset you last night." He wasn't sure if she would respond right away, but he hoped she would. Timothée knew he had messed up by not being more careful with his words, but he also hoped she understood that it wasn't intentional. Zendaya took a little while to reply. When she finally did, it wasn't exactly what Timothée was hoping for. Her message was short and to the point. "I'm fine. Just needed some space." That was it. No emoji, no explanation. Timothée felt even worse. He had hoped she would want to talk, but now it seemed like she wanted to avoid the conversation. Still, Timothée wasn't ready to let it go. He thought about it for a few minutes, then called her. He knew it was risky. Maybe she wasn't ready to talk yet, but he needed to hear her voice. After a few rings, she picked up. "Hey," Zendaya said quietly. "Hey," Timothée replied, his voice a little nervous. "I just want to say I'm really sorry about last night. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I was trying to be funny, but I messed up." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Timothée held his breath, waiting for her to say something. Finally, Zendaya spoke. "I know you didn't mean anything by it," she said, "but sometimes I feel like people don't take me seriously, like I'm just the sidekick or something, even when I'm doing my best. You made me feel like that last night." Timothée's heart sank as he listened. He had no idea how much his words had affected her. He never wanted to make her feel small or unimportant. "I'm so sorry, Zendaya," he said, his voice full of sincerity. "I respect you so much, and I should have been more careful. I never meant to make you feel like that. You're amazing, and I don't ever want to take away from that." There was a pause again, but this time it wasn't as tense. Zendaya let out a small sigh. "It's okay. I know you didn't do it on purpose. It just hit me in the wrong way. I needed to step away for a bit, but I'm not mad at you." Timothée felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you for understanding. I'll be more careful next time, I promise." "I know you will," she replied, a slight smile in her voice. "Let's just move on from it. No hard feelings." They both laughed softly, and for the first time that morning, Timothée felt a little lighter. The tension between them had started to fade. It wasn't completely gone, but they were on their way to fixing things. He knew they would be fine. It just took a small conversation to get there. As the call ended, Timothée felt a renewed sense of gratitude for their friendship. Sometimes misunderstandings happened, but it was how they handled them that really mattered. The next day, things between Zendaya and Timothée felt different, but in a good way. After their phone conversation, there was an unspoken understanding between them. They had worked through the tension, and even though things hadn't gone perfectly, they both felt like they could move on. The day of the press interviews arrived, and both of them were expected to meet with reporters and answer questions about the movie. The cast gathered in a large room, where a few journalists were already waiting with their cameras and notepads. Zendaya and Timothée walked in together, side by side, and immediately the room's energy changed. Their chemistry was undeniable, and the reporters were excited to hear from them. Zendaya smiled as she took her seat. Timothée followed and sat next to her. They exchanged a brief look, a small gesture that let each other know everything was okay. It was a quiet, comforting moment, and it didn't go unnoticed by the people around them. As the interviews began, Zendaya and Timothée both did what they do best: charm the room. Zendaya answered questions with her usual grace, talking about her character in Dune and the challenges of filming in the desert. She spoke about the amazing cast and how proud she was to be part of such a big project. Timothée did the same, sharing funny behind-the-scenes stories and giving thoughtful answers to the film's deeper themes. The reporters asked a few questions about their on-screen chemistry and the bond between their characters. Zendaya and Timothée exchanged a few jokes, both of them comfortable and at ease now. There were no awkward pauses, no moments of tension. It was just like it always had been, two friends supporting each other, showing respect for each other's work. At one point, a reporter asked about the premiere the night before. Timothée answered first, with a laugh. "It was great. I had a blast. But I definitely learned to be more careful with my words." Zendaya nodded and added, "Yeah, sometimes it's easy to joke around and forget how things might come across. But I think we've got it figured out now." The room laughed, and the tension from the premiere seemed to melt away completely. Zendaya and Timothée were in sync again, like they always were. Later, after the interviews were over, they found a quiet corner of the room. Zendaya turned to Timothée and smiled. "Thanks for apologizing. I really appreciate it," she said. Timothée smiled back. "Of course, you're one of my best friends. I never want to make you feel bad." They stood there for a moment, just enjoying the calm after the storm. Zendaya and Timothée both knew that no relationship was perfect, but as long as they could talk things through and support each other, everything would be okay. As they walked out of the interview room together, ready to face the next part of the day, the bond between them felt stronger than ever. A few days passed, and things between Zendaya and Timothée were back to normal. The movie's promotion was in full swing, and they were busy with interviews, photo shoots, and press events. They were working well together, but their friendship had returned to a more relaxed rhythm. The small tension from the premiere was no longer hanging over them. One afternoon, Zendaya and Timothée had some free time between events. They decided to take a break and grab lunch at a nearby cafe. They had been working non-stop for days, so a little quiet time was much needed. When they walked into the cafe, they noticed it wasn't very crowded. A few people were sitting by the windows, but it was calm, the kind of place where they could have a normal conversation without being interrupted. They grabbed a table by the window and sat down, looking through the menu. Zendaya smiled, glad to have some space away from the flashing cameras and microphones. "I think I'm going to get the soup," Timothée said, scanning the menu. "It's one of those days where nothing sounds better than soup." Zendaya laughed. "You're always in the mood for soup, but I get it. It's the perfect comfort food." They both ordered and then sat back, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. The conversation shifted between work and personal life, movies they had recently seen, what they liked to do when they had free time, and how they were coping with the craziness of their busy schedules. At one point, Zendaya noticed how easy it felt to talk to Timothée. There was no tension, no awkwardness, just the usual comfortable friendship they had always shared. They joked around about silly things, laughed about some of the funny moments from the press events, and shared some behind-the-scenes stories from filming. As they ate, Zendaya felt a sense of relief. She realized that the premiere was really behind them now. She had been worried that their friendship would never feel the same, but now she could see that nothing had changed in the long run. They had worked through it, and it made them stronger. Timothée had shown respect for her feelings, and she appreciated that. "I'm glad we talked things through," Zendaya said, looking at Timothée. "It's not always easy to admit when something's bothering you, but I'm glad we did." Timothée nodded. "Yeah, me too. I hate when there's tension. I always want to fix things quickly. I never want to make you feel like that." "I know, and I'm glad you understood," Zendaya said with a smile. "It just made me realize that sometimes I need to speak up sooner instead of letting things build up." "Same here," Timothée replied. "But I guess we're learning, right?" They both laughed again, and the conversation turned back to lighter topics. The rest of their lunch passed easily, with no more serious talk. Afterward, they both felt refreshed, ready to get back to their busy schedules. As they left the cafe and walked back to their next event, it was clear that their friendship had grown even stronger. They knew how to communicate better now, and that made all the difference. A week later, Zendaya and Timothée were both attending a major gala. It was one of the biggest events of the season, with a long guest list and an extravagant venue. The night was full of excitement, with designers showing off their latest creations, celebrities mixing with the press, and cameras flashing every few seconds. Zendaya and Timothée were both nominated for awards, which added to the excitement. As they arrived at the event, the atmosphere felt much different from the premiere. There was no tension between them now. They had moved past that awkward moment, and it was clear that their bond was stronger than ever. They walked the red carpet side by side, smiling and laughing as photographers called their names. The crowd cheered, and it felt like a celebration, not just of the movie but of their friendship too. At the entrance of the venue, Zendaya noticed Timothée was looking a bit nervous. He was trying to hide it, but she could tell. She nudged him lightly with her elbow. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, her voice calm and friendly. Timothée glanced at her and smiled. "Yeah, just a little nervous about the awards tonight. You know how it is." Zendaya nodded. She understood. The pressure of being in the spotlight, of possibly winning something. It was a lot to handle, but she also knew that Timothée was used to these kinds of moments. He always seemed cool and collected, even when he wasn't feeling it. "You've got this," Zendaya said, offering him a reassuring smile. "Just do what you do best. You'll be great." Timothée chuckled. "Thanks, I needed that." They continued into the venue, where they were greeted by other stars and industry professionals. The night was filled with conversation, laughter, and the sound of clinking glasses. Zendaya and Timothée caught up with a few friends and talked about their latest projects, but the topic of the premiere came up only briefly. It wasn't awkward anymore, and neither of them seemed to dwell on it. It was a past moment, and they both knew they had worked through it. When it was time for the awards ceremony, Zendaya and Timothée found their seats near the front. The crowd was buzzing with excitement, and the tension in the air was thick as everyone waited to hear the winners announced. When Zendaya's name was called for her category, she stood up to applause and made her way to the stage. She smiled, thanked everyone, and gave a short but heartfelt speech. As she made her way back to her seat, Timothée stood up and hugged her. "I knew you had it in you," he said, grinning. Zendaya laughed. "Thanks, but we both know you're next." Timothée smiled, his nerves from earlier starting to fade, and when his name was called for his category, he stood up, confident and ready. As he made his way to the stage to accept his award, Zendaya cheered for him from her seat, proud of her friend. The night ended with both of them smiling, feeling successful and happy. The tension that had once existed was now a distant memory. They had faced their small issue, talked it through, and moved forward, proving that their friendship was stronger than any moment of discomfort. The months that followed the gala were filled with more projects, press tours, and filming. Zendaya and Timothée's careers continued to soar, but their friendship remained just as strong. They were still working on Dune Part 2, and both of them were involved in other exciting projects that kept them busy. Despite their hectic schedules, they made time to check in with each other. Whether it was a quick text or a casual phone call, they stayed in touch. Their bond had only deepened since the premiere. They were both grateful for the support they had shown each other through the ups and downs. One evening, Zendaya was in New York City for a promotional event, while Timothée was finishing up some work in Los Angeles. They hadn't had the chance to catch up for a while, so Zendaya sent him a message. "Hey, how's everything going? We need to catch up soon." Timothée replied almost immediately, "Everything's good. Just finished filming a scene, and now I'm getting some downtime. How about you?" Zendaya smiled at his reply. She loved how easy it was to talk to him, no matter how busy they were. "Busy as usual, but I've got some time off soon, so maybe we can do something fun when I get back to Le." Timothée responded quickly again. "Sounds great. I've got a couple of ideas. We should definitely hang out when you're free." The excitement of their messages was clear. Even though they were both working constantly, they always made time for each other, and it felt like nothing could come between their friendship. A few weeks later, Zendaya finally made her way back to Los Angeles. True to their word, she and Timothée planned a day to hang out. They decided to take a break from their busy lives and do something relaxing, something simple. They met up at a park where they could walk around and talk without the pressure of cameras or schedules. As they strolled through the park, they laughed about everything and nothing. They talked about the movies they were working on, their families, and how they were both handling the constant spotlight. Zendaya was grateful for moments like this. It was rare that they could be away from the hustle of their careers and just be themselves. Timothée, who was usually very private about his personal life, opened up about some of the challenges he had faced over the past few months. Zendaya listened intently, offering advice when needed. She had always been a good listener, and Timothée appreciated how she never judged him. She gave him space to talk, which made him feel comfortable opening up. "Thanks for listening," he said as they sat on a bench for a while, resting their feet. "I don't always get to talk about this stuff, but it helps to have someone who gets it." Zendaya smiled. "Of course, that's what friends are for." They sat there for a while longer, just enjoying each other's company. The day was perfect, a simple, quiet day with no expectations. It reminded both of them how much they valued their friendship. No matter how famous they became or how busy their schedules got, they would always make time for each other. As the day ended, they promised to stay in touch and catch up again soon. They knew that no matter what, they had each other's backs, and that was the most important thing of all. As the year came to a close, Zendaya and Timothée found themselves looking back at everything they had gone through together. The premiere incident seemed like a distant memory now, just a small bump on the road of their friendship. They had grown even closer since then, learning more about each other and how to handle the pressures that came with being in the spotlight. One evening, they found themselves at another event, this time a charity gala for a cause they both cared about. It wasn't as flashy as some of the other events they had attended, but it had a more intimate feel. Zendaya and Timothée sat together at a table, surrounded by other stars, but they didn't feel the need to entertain the crowd. They were happy to simply be in each other's company, enjoying a quiet night for a good cause. As the evening went on, they talked about their plans for the next year. Zendaya mentioned how she was looking forward to taking on new acting challenges, pushing herself in ways she hadn't before. Timothée shared that he was excited to explore some new roles too, ones that would allow him to grow as an actor. "I've learned so much this past year," Zendaya said, looking over at Timothée. "Not just about acting, but about the people around me too." Timothée nodded. "Yeah, same here. I think the biggest thing I've learned is how important it is to have real friends who understand you, no matter what. People who aren't just interested in your career, but who really get you." Zendaya smiled, knowing exactly what he meant. Their friendship had always been different. It wasn't about the red carpets, the awards, or the fame. It was about something much deeper, a mutual respect and understanding that went beyond what people saw on the surface. "That's why I'm glad we have each other," Zendaya said softly. "We don't have to pretend, you know. We can just be ourselves." Timothée grinned. "Exactly. No pressure, just us." As the night continued, they felt a sense of peace. They knew that no matter where their careers took them, they would always be there for each other. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about being real and honest with each other, even when things got tough. By the end of the night, Zendaya and Timothée found themselves walking out of the event together, side by side. The flashing cameras followed them as they stepped into the street, but there was no tension between them. They were comfortable, laughing as they discussed what they would do next. It didn't matter that their lives were constantly under a microscope. What mattered was the bond they had formed, their friendship that had survived the challenges of fame and had only grown stronger. They didn't need anything else. They had each other, and that was enough. As they said their goodbyes and went their separate ways that night, both of them felt a sense of fulfillment. They had faced obstacles, but through it all, they had learned what really mattered in the end. Their friendship was the most important thing, and it would last, no matter what came next.